Psychedelics for CEOs. That's right. The days of tune in, turn on, drop out, well, they may have been short lived. What we're finding out is that psychedelics can actually help you be a better business person. Hang on to the end because we're going to talk this thing through, and I want to share with you some considerations about why psychedelics might be important for building the future of leadership. All right, welcome back, everybody. So, yeah, this topic is near and dear to my heart because over the years I have worked with quite a few CEOs and entrepreneurs, and as a matter of fact, I am that myself. I have been a serial entrepreneur since 2009, starting and selling a handful of businesses. It is something that brings me great joy, and I know that it is something that is full of significant challenge. Now, it looks like from the outside, and I've heard this from the folks that I've worked with and the folks who have seen my work, that as a entrepreneur or a business leader, wow, it seems glamorous, right? You've got this company and these employees, you're doing something that seems to be making lots of money and even maybe changing the world. Well, there is truth to that. And there is an unseen pain. There are unseen challenges that only your peers can imagine. And depending on where you are in your level of business, your peers may be few and far between. The truth is, being an entrepreneur, a CEO, a business owner is full of isolation. It's full of fatigue. It's full of late nights, early mornings, long weekends. You are often the unsung hero, and when someone needs to take responsibility, well, it's always you. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is that people think because you're running a business, then you just must be running full of money. And uh, as I've watched the popular trend of entrepreneurism take hold in America, I've often wondered to myself how many of these individuals are really prepared for the fact that their employees will get paid before them, that you will be, for a significant period of time, most likely, experiencing a great deal of pretty constant uncertainty. You don't know where the next clients, the next business, the next dollar is coming from often. And this creates untold stress on individuals and their families. So it's important that we explore this, especially, as I said, like as entrepreneurism and business ownership becomes more popularized and mainstreamed. So psychedelics can bring a lot of value to someone's business life, to your professional life. They absolutely can help reveal blind spots. There are so many things about ourselves that we simply cannot see. Old behavior patterns, ways of communicating, ways of relating to the world that are frankly very often rooted in early childhood trauma. And you can go to the therapist and sit on the couch as many times as you would like. And I've heard it over and over the years. There's a reason why the cliche of psychedelics are like 20 years of therapy in a single afternoon, because there are things that cannot be touched through conscious information sharing or relating of past experiences. These are parts of ourselves that our conscious mind is not aware of. And this is why psychedelics can be so helpful in allowing us, granting us access to these parts of ourselves. We all come to our careers with bias, social bias, ethnic bias, political bias. We have certain ways of seeing the world, and we often think that everyone else does or should see the world in the same way. Psychedelics help to unwire that. They help us to realize that there is a much bigger perspective. One of the most measurable outcomes of a psychedelic experience is the increased level of openness thereafter. And this applies to all aspects of our lives, or it can, where we begin to see that our personal biases are not necessarily rooted in reality, but in an old story that's clinging on. And these old stories, well, they need to be rewritten, if not completely thrown out. We've also got bad habits. We don't recognize it sometimes. I'm on a week now without coffee, and coffee is spoken of in America like it is actually should be breakfast. What I have found since I have um, stopped drinking coffee, which was actually an outcome of some inner work that I have been doing, is that I am so much more regulated. My decision making is much clearer. My anxiety level is so much lower. Now, am I here to say that drinking coffee is necessarily a bad habit? I wouldn't say that. Um, does it have a certain level of negative impact? Well, it certainly can, and it has for me. That may not be the case for you, and I'm not asking you to necessarily agree with me, but I'm sure you can agree that you have a bad habit that you'd like to change. Whatever that is, you need some support. You need some broadening of your perspective, maybe even to realize that it is a bad habit. Sometimes we get caught up in patterns that we just don't even recognize that they're there. If you've listened to my content for any period of time, you've heard me talk about my cannabis habit and how problematic it became. And yes, I know a great number of business owners and CEOs that use cannabis regularly in an attempt to regulate their nervous system, but it's actually having the opposite effect for many of them. Won't stay on that for too long. Don't want to upset anybody too much. Psychedelics are also well known for their ability to increase creativity and expand our innovation. Yes, you can connect information from a variety of disciplines or fields or seemingly unrelated subjects, and that is the key to evolution and growth. Your business may benefit enormously from something that's happening in a field or in an environment that you are currently not even aware of. And if you were to widen that lens, expand your perspective, then you might just be able to make those connections. It's worth noting that Franz Crick, I won't say discover, because that's not how he discovered the DNA helix, but he received the vision for the DNA double helix through an LSD experience. And then he went into the lab and found that it was actually there. Now, was he taking a variety of disciplines or disparate information and bringing it together? I mean, the story is that he saw two snakes intertwined. Is this mythology working its way into science or some other unknown connection? Either way, the case is clear that LSD played a vital role in the uncovering of what we now know is one of the most important components of human well-being. It's also known that Steve Jobs spoke highly of his use of LSD and its ability to help expand his mind and bring in different perspectives, allowing him for greater innovation and productivity. As a matter of fact, many of you probably know that Silicon Valley for many years has been fueled by psychedelic experiences, albeit mostly underground. Now, however, as the tide is changing and we are becoming more accepting and open to psychedelics for mental health, personal growth, spiritual flourishing, well, more of those folks are coming out and speaking of their experiences and how they have fueled technological advancement in the last 10 to 20 years. This is in large part due to their ability to facilitate novel perspectives. As I said, you can bring in information from a variety of different and disparate angles, and then this allows you a brand new perspective. But now I want to get a little deeper into how psychedelics can help CEOs in ways that maybe don't fit into the mainstream narrative, but what I've absolutely seen play out in the individuals that I've worked with. So creativity and expanded awareness, sure, that's kind of a given. But one of the topics that we don't hear discussed in leadership is that it's not about control. We still very much in our Western world have the perspective, and I would say worldwide, I suppose, that leadership means control. You tell people what to do. You have the vision and you tell people how to fill the roles and you control the entire process. Well, that is ultimately what fuels most of the pain and suffering, to be quite honest, within the life of a business owner. How do I speak to this other than through experiences of the individuals that I've worked with? And these are difficult. These are some of the most difficult experiences. So I have been in my past what you would call a control freak. I wanted things my way. When I came to work with psilocybin, this was the single greatest struggle that I had in that space. I wanted it to be predictable. I wanted it to be repeatable. I wanted it to be what I wanted it to be. And they cannot. The experience is going to take its course and you are along for the ride. And that's just all that there is to it. You can do what you can do to establish a set and setting and prepare yourself as well as possible. But the more you can give yourself over to the experience, well, then the better, the more impactful it's going to be. And in an overwhelming majority of the executives and business owners that I've worked with over the years, they had the same perspective. They spend their days and weeks controlling their environment. They want predictable outcomes. They want measurable results. They want to know that when they say something gets done, it gets done. It's understandable. There's good reason for that. And it ultimately becomes a limitation. Because if we want to grow teams, if we want to support people, if we want to truly encourage growth and innovation, then we have to trust the process. We have to let go. Yes, we trust our vision. We trust the people that we bring onto teams. And when we try to micromanage them, we create discord, dissatisfaction, our teams fall apart, and the outcome is generally not nearly as good as it could have been if we would have allowed the process to flow, grow, and evolve more naturally. Think about it. You hire people because of their skills, and then you try to micromanage those skills and behaviors. There is a growing movement in corporate world to allow much more creative freedom to the very skilled and intelligent individuals who have been hired and brought on. I think it's safe to say that we're, as a society, growing pretty tired of everything looking like it is created through a cookie cutter. Tools like AI are amazing. I am not going to be one here to say that we should not be using AI. And we're already getting just a little fatigued with the fact that things look the same. Things, we can tell that there is an inauthenticity to them. You think about the video content that you watch, and this has been something that has really shaped the way that I've been working with the content I create. We're at a point now where people want to see the mistakes. They want to know that the person on the screen is actually a human being. We're probably going to come to a point in the not too distant future where AI is programmed to include faux pas, where you have to have your AI clone make a verbal mistake or have some kind of a tick so that people will trust that they are an actual human behind them. I'm working with a company right now to help create a promotional AI video for a project that I'm working on, and it is absolutely incredible what can be created. And it creates this sense of distrust that if if we can out of thin air create an AI clone of an individual who can speak perfectly about any given subject with the infinite knowledge that is in on the internet or in our databases, then how do we ever know that what we're watching or listening to is actually authentic? So in our real lives, when we are in flesh with human beings, as leaders, as support people, we want to know that we are working with humans. We want to be able to see that the individual who is there supporting us acknowledges that they make mistakes as well. So the humanness is such an important part of this. And control, well, it may seem like it's a natural human trait. It's natural that we desire control, but control is actually not ours to have. Just like in the psychedelic space, the more we let go, we set the stage, we create the set and setting, and then we let go and allow that process to unfold, we'll find that our creations, our inspirations often turn out far more beautiful than we could have ever imagined if we tried to micromanage whatever it was. Trust creates an environment where people, real people, can grow, where there is a flourishing of life, where wisdom can come to the surface. You don't get that when you are franchising every decision out, when you are having a template for every process and procedure. All those things are helpful, and they are limited. They are limitations. So, one of the greatest changes to my life that I have to thank my psychedelic work for is my ability to let go of control. And since I have done that, I have continued. And there's always letting go to do, but as I get better and better at letting go of control, I see better and better outcomes in my work and in my personal life. Something else that hasn't been a common part of our conversation around business management is emotional intelligence. I have been told by colleagues that you have to separate emotion. You cannot be an emotional being if you are a business owner. Well, my friends, you cannot not be an emotional being. And the more that we pretend that we aren't, the more that we pretend that we don't have emotions, well, then our emotions are actually controlling us. This goes back to control. Now, in no way am I suggesting that we need to just be emotionally unstable or bringing all of our emotional content to the table when we're in a professional environment or relationship. You absolutely have to have boundaries for yourself. And yet, what is unhealed, what is expressed subconsciously, is significantly impacting the culture, the teams, everything that we're working to build. And so, if we do not have emotional intelligence for ourselves, being aware of why we feel, what we feel, even how we feel, many of us don't even know how to speak to how we feel. We just shove it down. Or if we're not able to be emotionally intelligent with the people that are in our environment, the people who are working with us on our teams who are supporting our visions, then we will eventually burn them out. We will be dismissive, inconsiderate, and they won't stick around for long. I think the main way that this shows up is through reactive behavior versus responsive behavior. Have you ever worked with someone, or if you're a business owner yourself, have you ever found yourself, or even an employee, uh, jumping to a conclusion or being highly reactive in a scenario where it was not helpful, as it seldom is? That is probably because there was some kind of untended, underlying emotional issue. When we work through our emotional constraints, when we process our emotions healthfully, then we become responsive. We don't feel like we're in fight or flight. We don't feel like we have to jump in and save the day or run in fear. Responsiveness means showing up to the whole person, to the full situation, to patiently and fully considering everything that's involved, the individuals, the tangential situations and individuals. It comes with patience. It looks like compassion. I think we're thankfully, slowly, but thankfully, moving beyond the days when business didn't care about your family. They didn't care if your mother died 2 days ago. They didn't care if your kid was in the hospital. You just had to return the results. I know that hasn't always been the way for everyone. There have been compassionate business leaders over the years, for sure, and overwhelmingly, there haven't. So, the fact that we are waking up to compassionate, caring, emotionally aware business owners and leaders, I think that's a great step forward in our evolution. We are whole beings. We are not just employees. We are not just professionals or business owners or CEOs or entrepreneurs. We are parents. We are children. We are individuals with entire lives that impact every decision that we make, even if we're not aware of it. So, becoming emotionally regulated, becoming emotionally intelligent can dramatically improve the environment and the culture where you work, the business you own, and the decisions that you make. One of my favorite outcomes that I have seen over and over again in the folks that I've worked with is that there becomes a shift from profit to purpose. Now, businesses must be profitable. That's just a given. If it's not if it's not profitable, then it's just a hobby. And hobbies are expensive. But when profit is the only motive, well, that's when we start to overlook the entire person, as I was just speaking to. Purely profit-driven motives don't care about what the soul is experiencing, what the emotional human behind the material shell that you're standing before is really experiencing. Profit over purpose doesn't care about the environment. It has horrible negative consequences that are simply dismissed in justification of better bottom line. But we find that when we are purpose driven, well, we can blast beyond that plateau of what we have so far called success. You can only buy so much. When I see the mega yachts of Mark Zuckerberg, my heart actually goes out to him. That is not fulfillment. We look at that and often think that is the sign of success. But I know over the years I've worked with truly successful business leaders that real success looks like happy families. It looks like children that know their parents. It looks like networks of friends who come together to support each other through challenging times or to share and enjoy together. Real success looks like waking up and doing the thing that you desire to do because you know it's going to bring more light into the world, that it's going to help people. This can be profitable, and it should be profitable. You will not find me bemoaning capitalism and saying that we should just do away with money. I do not believe that. I do not agree with that. I think money is an amazing tool that allows us to exchange goods and services in a pretty reasonable way. And everything can get out of balance. Even purpose. This is something that I have really had to navigate over the years. I spent the entirety of up into my 40s only purpose driven and completely rejecting profit, thinking that you can actually grow and sustain a business solely on purpose. Psychedelics help to wake me up to that falsehood, to that story that I was telling myself that was not grounded in reality. The marrying of the two, purpose and profit. Then when you have profit, you can do really good things with it. So Mark Zuckerberg, I hope you're enjoying your boat, but there is so much more to this big world. Things like legacy, things like actually having a meaning to your life, things like stewarding a better world. Imagine if the profits that turned into exorbitant luxury. I'm not against luxury. There's nice things are wonderful to have. But imagine if there was truly a balance and profits, moreover, were used to create a healthy world rather than to satisfy egoic needs that cannot ever be satisfied. I'm not criticizing anybody that has a boat or has nice things. That's not the point. The point is that when we are not in balance, the scales get tipped and everyone suffers. So, what can we do? What can we do to balance purpose and profit within our lives? This is one of the most beautiful challenges, struggles that I have watched executives, leaders work through over the years. And it's one that, like I said, myself, I've struggled with, and I enjoy. I enjoy the struggle and the challenge within. Now, there are many other things that psychedelics can do for the business owner, CEO, or executive, or entrepreneur. We'll save that for another day, perhaps. Before I leave you, though, I want to talk about just a couple of things that psychedelics can do, because there is a tendency for us to portray them as a fix-all. I've heard it said many, many times, if the world leaders would just all be dosed with ayahuasca, we would have a peaceful world. Well, my friends, I can tell you that's not the case. And as a matter of fact, we have historical precedent. The Aztec culture was highly psychedelic and practiced human sacrifice. Psychedelics do not inherently make you a more moral person. They can assist us in making better choices, but ultimately it is up to us as individuals to make the conscious decision to be more considerate and more compassionate. And when we decide that and we work with psychedelics, then they will help to facilitate that. They are non-specific amplifiers. Whatever is in there is going to get amplified. And so as you cultivate compassion, as you can cultivate understanding, then you will find that your psychedelic work will help to further reveal and express that in your life. Psychedelics cannot replace good leadership skills. I have actually seen a number of leaders who went off the deep end with their psychedelic work, and they became less effective leaders. You can let go of too much control. You can become too up in the air, too ungrounded, too unboundaried. It's important that we continue to work through the integration process and not just think that the experiences or the plants themselves are going to solve the problems. They will not necessarily make you a better leader. That's up to you to do that. They are tools that can help you make that decision and implement it. But it's up to you to actually do the work. They also can't fix toxic culture. I've seen a number of companies have psychedelic retreats for their entire teams, and this can be incredibly powerful for bonding and problem solving and creativity, all the things that we've spoken about. But toxic culture is something that once it is established, it can be very difficult to root out. It may take a complete change of mind and maybe a complete change of resources, human resources, that is. Some folks, psychedelics can't help. Narcissists are absolutely one of those categories. Anyone who is actually a clinical narcissist, stands to become more so with their psychedelic work rather than less. So this is important to recognize. Psychedelics cannot make you anything. Again, I just want to say that over and over. It is up to you to make the choice to be the person that you know you can be. Psychedelics are powerful tools to help you become that, but only if you have the attentiveness. The discipline is a part of it, but it's more than discipline. It's the caring. You have to care enough. You have to be humble enough to be willing to admit that you were wrong and to be able to change. So, what do you think? Are psychedelics an important tool in the future of leadership? One of the important reflections here for me as I have built and sold and run companies is the realization that the organization itself is a reflection of my consciousness. Every founder, every CEO, you are the conscious fuel behind the organization that you run. If you are not kind to yourself, then you will not be kind to others. If you do not love yourself, then you will not love others or your work. If you do not have a connection to a sense of purpose and something larger than yourself, well, where do you think that's going to take your business? It might be profitable for a while, but will it really outlast you? And I think that's what all of us who are creatives are seeking to do, is to bring something in the world that can serve as a legacy, that can impact the future positively after we're gone. So I'm going to ask you to consider now, what is the consciousness that you bring into your business? And how can you help that evolve? If you think working with me might be a way to do so, then I would invite you to check out ericsosborne.com. And if not, well, then why have you stayed through this entire video? All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining me. Business leaders out there, keep doing the work. It's important what you're doing. There are people who look to you for inspiration and motivation. For anyone that may have been a part of my past that was unhealed and my leadership that could have used great improvement, well, just know that I'm doing what I can to keep getting better each and every day. Thank you for the lessons that you've taught me, and I hope that you have learned something as well.